The third major existential influence was Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard. And he was slightly older than Nietzsche. I don't know if Nietzsche was familiar with his writings. I'm not familiar of any interaction they would have had, even though they would have overlapped slightly. But I like to give Kierkegaard the title of the father of existentialism. And his whole idea was, and I got a slide for the themes. Existential themes or existential influences on psychology. And I spent a lot of time talking about this when I spoke last year, but I just want to do a short for those of you that aren't familiar with existentialism as a philosophy. Because it is so radically individualistic, you can't really define it, because literally everyone can have their own legitimate definition of existentialism. That's how individualistic this theory is. Its focus is on freedom, and I'm talking about radical freedom. They don't buy into this materialistic determinism or religious predestination, that we have real choices with real consequences. We have free will, and because we have free will, we are responsible for our actions. We can't just play the victim. We can't just say, oh, it was fate or luck of the draw, or I'm just a domino in a long string. It's like, no, you have real choices that have real consequences, and you need to take responsibility for your actions. Because we're such radical individuals, it creates in us feelings of alienation. And this is such a great example, because it's like Hollywood Squares in here, and we got everyone's in their own little worlds, right? And that's exactly what Kierkegaard's talking about. We may be interacting in this class, but we're truly living in our own little worlds. And it's really funny. Over the years of me being a professor, I can't tell you how many people patronizingly walk past me or in faculty forums and stuff, and people say, oh, Blackburn, you live in your own little world. And I'm just like, true, but at least I know I live in my own little world. They think they're living in the real world, but they're living in just as much their own little world as I am. They're just not aware of it. And Kierkegaard believed, because we are so unique, even if we have friends or even a soulmate level connection with someone, they still do not truly understand us. And you're like, go, no, Blackburn, we're totally transparent. We have no secrets. We share everything. I don't care. Because they're not you, when you share something with them, they are interpreting it through their life, through their experiences, through themselves. And they do not understand it, even if you're telling them as clearly as you can. And that Kierkegaard believed that alienation leaves us with this feeling of angst. And angst is such a great word because it means anxiety, fear, and dread all rolled up into one. But it's a fear, anxiety, and dread of you know not what. It's not like a beastie's chasing you, or you can't pay the rent, or you have a sick child. It's just this existential angst that something's wrong or broken in the world or in yourself. If you saw The Matrix, it's like when Neo was talking to Morpheus, Orpheus, and no, it was Morpheus. And Morpheus was describing it to Neo. He says, it's like you have a splinter in your mind, but you don't know how to extract it. And I love it. For Kierkegaard, he believed the only way out of that alienation was in Christ, but he was a Christian philosopher, because he believed in Christ. Now, for the first time, you were connected with a being that truly knew you. You were no longer alone in the universe. And not only can I now connect to God because I have the Spirit of God within me, But for each of you Hollywood Square people that have the Spirit of God in this Zoom talk, I can connect with you on a way I never could have done just as Fred, because we share the same spirit. Pretty wild. But see, outside of Christ, there is no connection to bring you together, at least that I'm aware of. Okay. Authenticity. This is this idea of being your true self. Once again, Kierkegaard, from coming from a Christian perspective, believed outside of Christ, we can't be our true selves because we're dead selves and we're the slaves of sin. We're the slaves of appetite. We're the slaves of outside influence. True freedom and authenticity comes when we have new life in Christ, when we become the Fred or the Cindy or the Gary that God intended for us to be. And that is really quite something. Existentialists generally reject labels and categories. In fact, most existentialists don't like to be called existentialists because it's just one more label. You're putting them in the box. Kierkegaard said, if you label me, you negate me. Stop calling me like a white bearded gnome or white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male or whatever label you're putting on me. I'm Fred. I'm unique. I'm an individual. And when you label me as a Christian or an evangelical or as an American or any of that, you're not dealing with this. You can just put me in this neat little category on your shelf because you already know what that means. You already know what that group is. And I hate it. I mean, think about it as women, right? Just being categorized as a woman, and all of a sudden people have all these assumptions or expectations or limitations just because they have labeled you a woman. And that would drive me crazy.